So today we're going to take a few minutes and talk about some of the changes Matt Every's made in his setup and backswing in order to make the lower body more stable, get the club approaching from a little bit flatter of an angle, a little more from the inside, uh, and really all in an effort to help start the ball more online. So in Matt's old setup, he set up too much out over his toes. Kind of all his weight was kind of forward, too much pressure towards his toes. Now he's more balanced over the arch of his foot. As he goes back to the top of the backswing, has a drastic impact on where he ends up. His camera angles aren't exactly perfectly identical, but you're going to see in his current golf swing that right shoulder is more over his right heel. His hands are actually behind his heels at the top of the backswing, and his right hip is well behind his heels at the top of the backswing. In his old swing, that right shoulder's out over his toes. Right hip never gets behind his heels. Hands never get behind his heels. So he doesn't have enough depth going back. It's pretty easy to see that if we look at the top of the backswing, and I just draw a line up to the arch of the foot, how most of his body is kind of out forward of that. He's leaning too far forward. Pressure never gets into that right heel. If we look at his current swing, draw a line through the arch of his foot, you're going to see it pretty much bisects his body. Very balanced position. Pressure more into that right heel. Kind of more diagonal trace if we were looking at a pressure mat. And much better position at the top of the backswing. This more depth, more balanced position is going to drastically change how his lower body works and the direction the club kind of approaches the golf ball from. So in his old swing, what happened is this right knee started kicking forward immediately. His right hip worked too far out. When you added that on top of the fact that he started not getting enough depth into his right heel, this is going to make his downswing. So you're going to see his first move down, that right side starts kicking out very early. So if we look specifically at that right knee and right hip, as soon as he starts down, those start working way out. You can see before his hands even get to his kind of below shoulder level, his right heel's way off the ground. That kind of makes his right leg occupy the same space his arms would like to use, and it's going to force him to kind of stand up and back out of that as an effort to kind of create some room. So you're going to see his right side has worked out drastically by the time he gets to right around chest high. If we look at the current swing over here on the right, you're going to see how much less that right hip and knee work out as he's coming down. Right knee works more down, kind of using the ground for some leverage. That foot's not coming off the ground nearly as quickly, and his right hip isn't working nearly as out. As we continue kind of working down, that club's going to approach kind of right on the right forearm. And again, you're going to see the heel is just now starting to come off the ground. His old swing, club was coming down much steeper. His left leg, both legs are pretty much straight at this point. And as he's coming down or approaching impact, you're going to see that club head's coming down kind of outside his hands. And this is where he gets that big wipe to the right. So what happened is club's coming down steeply and outside his hands. He stands up as an effort to shallow it out and kind of remain balanced. Hands get really high at impact, which makes the face point more to the right. And when you get the face pointed to the right with the path going kind of a little bit steep and across it, it's very easy to lose the ball out to the right. In the more current swing from today, you're going to see that club approaches more from the inside. It's pretty much dead on his hands. In this swing, his path was actually 0.5 degrees left, about as neutral as you're going to get. And that right elbow has a lot more room coming down. It's actually in front of the hip as opposed to behind it because of how that right leg worked. So as they continue to impact, hands end up lower, lower body's more stable. Easiest way to see it is you're going to see his right hip is pretty much over the arch of his foot. So is his shoulder. Is that in his old swing, that right hip worked way too out. Actually out past his toes. And right shoulder was even more out. That right hip working out and him standing up, you're going to see his rear end is kind of right, left hip's kind of right over his heel. Right hip's out past the toes. Both heels off the ground. Current swing, left heel's on the ground, right heel slightly up, and rear end or left hip is way behind the heels. A lot more room for his arms. You're going to see that his shoulders, that left side's clearing a whole lot better. Ball's going to start more on line, go a lot straighter, and he's going to be able to hit a fade that starts to the left if it fades at all, which is kind of the ball flight he prefers and his eye sees. The problem with the swing on the left is that it was hard to get the fades to start far enough left, especially if there was wind coming off the left. The ball would tend to overcut too much to the right, or he'd pull it in an effort to get it to not overcut and then kind of double cross it. A lot more stable through impact because of the setup change being more balanced, getting more depth with both the arms and the pivot, allowing him to approach a little bit more on a flatter plane and more from the inside.